one of the challenges we face. People are hurrying and scurrying in Washington to try to get this legislation passed. And in reality, it has monumental impacts on the lives of many Americans and certainly on the middle class. And that's why we're here today, to try to hopefully break through and get people to understand those dynamics. So, this is my second time to this affordable housing project, and I was glad to know when we drove up, this is where we were coming, because I think it is an example of what Sue was talking about in homeownership and affordability in the context of the big downturn that we saw in Clark County, where we took it on the chin. And this was a project that, because of get that and turn it into a solution for veterans and nearby work, so people could live close to where they work in an affordable fashion. And so your explanation of all that, Roy, is very helpful. And Sue, I wish I could take you to Washington, D.C., because I think that you've articulated something very important here, and that is just the dream of homeownership, how much it's a part of the American dream, how much it's a centerpiece of the American dream. And if we pass this tax bill the way it is written right now, it threatens that for many Americans. And that is definitely not the message we should be sending. We're here today to say that it is a bad idea to pass the legislation that is before the United States Senate, because many of the people that will be affected across the United States have the least ability to pay, and yet in this legislation there still exist giant loopholes. When this idea of doing reform was first discussed, people said we were going to close a lot of the corporate loopholes and have this bill pay for itself. In reality, a lot of those loopholes still exist, and even some new ones, and then the burden is then shifted to middle-class families in our state. The bill that just passed out of the Senate Finance Committee still had a new deduction for big oil, a $4 billion tax break for oil companies in production in the United States, and other loopholes that we failed to close. And yet, it included language that will make it more difficult for affordable housing here in Southwest Washington. Just yesterday, and that is another problem with this legislation, we've been working very hard and tracking it, but I guarantee you, it has changed about 10 times, and never has gone through a regular process where you file a bill, it has a hearing, you have people comment on it, then you have it marked up in regular order. Literally every time it has been almost snuck out and from behind the closed doors, oh, this is what we're going to vote on, and lots of concern about it, and then they'll go back into the dark room and change a few things and then come out again. It's unbelievable what we had to do just to keep pace with it. But just yesterday, we got new analysis from the Senate bill, from the Nonpartisan Tax Policy Center. Next year, over 18,000 families in Clark County will see an average tax increase in nearly $2,700. And because of what Pam and Sue were talking about, because of the way the bill continues to be funded in the future, that in the next decade, that you'll see 108,000 families here in Clark County seeing an increase in their taxes as well. So that means that a lot of people in Clark County, if this bill is implemented, will be paying more in taxes. And I guarantee you, that should not be the goal of tax reform. Tax reform should be about lowering the burden on the middle class and helping our economy grow. What do we need to do to fix this? We need to slow down. We need to slow down and start listening to middle class families and not raising the debt on Americans by $1.5 trillion. Also, this bill puts us in a position of, if you pass this legislation, there were some concerns about health care. Next year, they would try to cut Medicare by $25 billion. Why do I say that? Because that would be the automatic cut that you would have to make in Medicare just to live within the sequestration goals. So it has unbelievable impacts. But we're here today to draw most attention to the issue of affordable housing. Why? Because we know how important housing is, as we just articulated, both for home ownership and for affordable housing units. We know how important it is to have the property tax and mortgage deductions. We know here that there are many people in Clark County that live and work here, but also on the other side of the river. And those people will lose their ability to deduct that income tax from their federal tax obligation. Nearly 28,000 Clark County families are able to deduct over $215 million in the out-of-state housing